So, you want to talk about religious freedom? Here's something you may not be aware of from the Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 3, Declaration of Rights, religious freedom. There shall be no law respecting the establishment of religion or prohibiting or penalizing the free exercise thereof. Religious freedom shall not justify practices inconsistent with public morals, peace, or safety. No revenue of the state or any political subdivision or agency thereof shall ever be taken from the public treasury directly or indirectly in aid of any church, sect, or religious denomination, or in aid of any sectarian institution. That's from the Florida Constitution, Article 1, Section 3. It is more restrictive than the federal Constitution, where we have the First Amendment and the Establishment Clause and the Free Exercise Clause. Now, we're going to talk about religious freedom on this program today, and we're going to maybe get into the I Believe license plate and this entire bumper sticker scheme that the state has enacted relative to license plates. We're going to talk about the Blaine Amendment that I just read. We're going to talk about evolution and the science curriculum program and what's happening with our state legislature relative to evolution in our public schools. With us on the program is the founder and the president of the First Coast Freethought Society to discuss all of this with us today, Earl Coggins. Earl, I appreciate the time you've taken to be here today. Welcome to Civil Discourse. This program is sponsored by the American Civil Liberties Union of Greater Jacksonville, Florida, now known as Northeast Florida Chapter. Earl, why is there a need for the First Coast Freethought Society in Jacksonville?
We have in this country 16.1% of our population states they have no religious preference at all. And that ranks just below Catholics at 23.9. So there's roughly 48 to 50 million people in this country who say, I don't have a religion. The First Coast Freethought Society was founded in 1998 to be a place where non-religious people could go, meet other non-religious people, discuss issues that we have about, well, church and state separation and other issues as far as being discriminated against or hearing about others who've been discriminated against by religious majorities.
Now you say, I don't have a religion. These 48 million people say, I don't have a religion. But you're not saying it like, oh, I wish I did have a religion necessarily. You're saying maybe they have chosen deliberately not to have a religion. One thing I forgot to mention in the opening is that you're not only the president and founder of the First Coast Freethought Society, but you hold the title of the vice president of AU, the Americans United for Separation of Church and State in Jacksonville as well.
Yes, I do. I'm a big believer in the separation of church and state, and most of the people affiliated with the First Coast Freethought Society hold deeply this value that the church and state should be forever separated. And a good example of why the First Coast Freethought Society exists would be in 2006, the city of Jacksonville held a day of faith. It might have been called a day of prayer, and they spent about $100,000 of taxpayer money.
That's correct.
Taxpayer money for this day of faith, day of prayer. I believe they were worried about the city's crime rate, and they thought that praying would reduce the crime. That's my perception of what they were trying to do.
They stated it was a murder and violence vigil or forum, and the invitation went out to those of faith.
Right, and it was against the Florida State Constitution, also against our federal Constitution to use that money for that purpose. They lost their lawsuit. American Atheists, a national organization, sued. They settled it. Yeah, they settled the lawsuit and paid for the attorney's fees. The interesting fact about that whole fiasco was what Mayor Payton had to say. He stated that, I think I'm doing pretty well in politics if atheists sue me, especially in Jacksonville. And that drives home the need for the First Coast Freethought Society.
Say that quote again. Mayor Payton said what?
I think I'm doing pretty well in politics if the atheists sue me, especially in Jacksonville.
Okay, relative to the American atheist lawsuit for the name of faith.
Yeah. Well, an interesting point about that.
How do you interpret that remark?
I interpret it.
Why would you think he thinks he's doing well if he gets a lawsuit relative to an action he took?
I interpret it as our mayor is just a little confused about perhaps what the word constituency means. What if he would have said, I'm doing pretty well in politics if African Americans sue me, or if the handicapped segment of our society sue me, or if senior citizens sue me? I thought it was an insult to people of non-religious worldview.
Mm-hmm. And sadly and tragically, since the Day of Faith, the murder rate went up.
That is correct.
What do you make of that?
I think the $100,000 could have been spent to put maybe some more police on the streets, doing something that had tangible effects. I know we don't have time to get into the efficacy of prayer. There's been plenty of scientific studies that shows that it doesn't work, but I'm not here today to talk about why prayer doesn't work. I'm just glad you invited me, and we want to talk about the Blaine Amendment.
We can get into the Blaine. We're going to get into, but just as an aside relative to prayer, there's a lot of people who view this program and who aren't among that 48 million who believe prayer is very comforting to themselves. Would you deny them?
No, absolutely not. No, my motto is whatever gets you through the night. If you need to pray, that's fine. Pray. Pray for me. Pray for everybody. But I don't think the mayor should be spending $100,000 of taxpayer money to do it, because he picked a certain sect to do it. Why didn't he pick the 30,000 different Christian denominations, or the thousands of other religions? Did they pray to Zeus? Did they pray to Apollo? Who did they pray to? We could talk about this for hours.
Well, relative to other things going on in our state and our community, we just had an I Believe license plate get not enough signatures, and it's probably not going to happen, at least not this time around, and maybe they'll come back. But you know what I'm talking about, a license? We have this set up in the state of Florida where if you pay a fee, I think the fee is $60,000, and get enough signatures on a petition that say they will purchase this license plate, I think you need to get about 30,000.
That's correct.
We've got the University of Florida, we've got Share the Road, we've got a lot of other schools. There's just over 100 of these license plates, and you know, a lot of these things in my mind are better suited as bumper stickers rather than the state of Florida putting their sanction onto them. Well, and it's open to all comers, and which makes it sort of fair if you're going to do this kind of crazy scheme.
I agree. And you know what's funny about you mentioning bumper stickers? On my drive over here this morning to the studio, I am following a car that has a large gold bumper sticker that says, I believe.
Right. And that's an individual statement.
Right.
And it doesn't come sanctioned by the state of Florida.
And I have bumper stickers on my car, and I agree with you. These issues, especially I believe, are bumper sticker slogans. They don't belong on a state license plate, because now we're getting involved in entanglement as far as the lemon test for whether or not a certain practice or a certain issue passes muster as far as the First Amendment to our Constitution.